Following the 79-82 drought, where I'd seen perennial pasture just disintegrate and just died from the long drought, as well as wingless grasshoppers. And so when you get a long dry period, you seem to get a lot of grasshoppers too, and just one with the other just wipes out your perennial pasture. Yeah, well, following a course in 1994 where I went and did a grazing for profit course, I came back thinking that I can look after my perennial pastures better, and I can increase my ground cover, increase my water retention, and reduce the risk of weed invasion, which at that stage was mainly serrated tussock. In 1995, after doing the grazing for profit course, we then formed a group, and in our group there was 6 farmers from half the state: Dubbo, Merriwar, Goulburn, and locally. And so we used that as our board to bounce ideas off each other and to help us develop this whole system, which back then was pretty new, and there was a lot of negativity in the media at that time about this so-called cell grazing. Our group was called Wobble Board. You had to, the idea was to get a unique name for each group, and ours was the Wobble Board because we reckoned, well, we were going to do a fair bit of wobbling, trying to learn this new system. And it's been a great group, and I've got a lot out of it, and there's some great participants in it. Well, we've had field days here. I think it's 3 that we've had. I know once we had one in about the 24th of May, and that would have been early. When I first started cell grazing, and the people that were here, I heard the comments, oh geez, he's got a lot of feed here. I'd have another 5,000 sheep on the place. But of course, you've got to go through winter here, and it's fine having all this feed in the autumn, but it just doesn't grow in the winter. So you've got to have that surplus of feed in the autumn to get through your winter. People don't ask me whether I'm growing more grass. They come past here and say, oh, you get more rain up here. But part of the reason why you get more grass is because you're making better use of the rain that you do get. And if, in the end, if you have a perennial plant that has twice the root system that it otherwise would have if it was continually grazed, you then got that area that's like a deeper sponge that then holds more moisture and gives it a chance to grow better. During the drought, like the 95 to say 2007, was a pretty tough period. Like, we had a few good years, but progressively it just got drier and drier and drier, and I continued rotational grazing, and by the end of it I couldn't run all the cattle away on adjustment. I was down to 3,000 sheep, but at least those I just ran through by supplementary feeding rather than paying full grain rations. Just by moving the sheep and giving them a bit of grain, I actually got through the winter of 97 really well without the big cost that some people spent on grain feeding. The primary idea of cell grazing is to manage your perennial grasses. That's nothing else matters. You need, I want to get perennial plants on the ground, and I want them still here in 10 years' time, not dying out next year because I've overgrazed them or the grasshoppers have eaten them off or whatever. The idea is to get perennial grasses, keep your ground cover, and from there you'll improve your water retention and your overall productivity of the place by growing more feed. Set stocking didn't work for me in that after the 79, 82 drought, I could see that sheep in particular just ate out a lot of my perennial grasses, except for Phleris, I suppose, but all the others went. Whereas this last drought, I ended up at the end of the drought with all the cocksfoots, a lot of the fescues, not all of them, and certainly all the Phleris, all there, still a strong perennial plants that were just ready to go once we had those really. The benefit of a perennial plant rather than an annual plant is the perennial plant has the root system, has the whole plants all there ready to go as soon as it rains, whereas an annual comes from bare, usually it dies off each year, you have bare ground, and then it has to germinate and start again from scratch once it rains. And that also opens it up to all the weeds and that wanting to germinate there at the same time. Cell grazing looks after your perennial pastures. The perennial pastures cannot stand being continually grazed, so by high stock numbers and quick grazing and then rest periods, you give the perennial pasture a chance to rest and recover before it's grazed again. When you move the stock on, you move it on leaving a body of feed or still in the paddock with leaf area on it, and that's your factory. That's what absorbs the sunlight and your root area absorbs the moisture. So by not having it grazed right to the ground, the plants are actually ready to grow again instead of having to take from root reserves and start again. It's more important just giving them some rest, even though you might end up there sooner than they wanted. They've had rest compared to if they were set stock. As one fella said to me, he said, at least it's more important that it gets some rest than getting no rest at all, which is what happens in set stocking. So in cell grazing, it'll get a rest. Sometimes it might be 3 months, sometimes it might only be a month, but the important thing is for it to get some rest before it's grazed again.